What happens when discipline meets disrespect? The sun was setting, painting the small park in Savannah, Georgia, with warm golden hues. Long shadows stretched over joggers, families, and friends who were enjoying laughter-filled moments. Among them sat Terrence, a man whose presence didn't demand attention, but often managed to capture it anyway. Seated on an old, weathered bench, he sipped calmly from a water bottle, his tranquil demeanor standing in stark contrast to the park's vibrant energy. Terrence was never in a rush. To him, life was best savored in its quiet, simple moments. But as is often the case, peace didn't last long. Out of the corner of his eye, Terrence noticed a group of young men loitering near the basketball court. Their laughter wasn't the carefree kind that spread joy. It carried a harsh edge, sharp and laced with mockery. Terrence knew this kind of laughter well. It wasn't humor, but the cruel amusement of those seeking the target. Today, Terrence realized he was that target. "Hey, big man," one of them yelled, their voice cutting through the park's background chatter. The group's leader, a wiry young man with a shaved head, pointed at Terrence with exaggerated movements. "What's up with the heavyweight division over there? Isn't it gym day?" Their laughter erupted, growing louder as the leader's words fueled their energy. Terrence's expression remained steady, his heart unaffected. He faced this kind of ridicule more times than he could count. His resilience was not just emotional but tangible, built over years of enduring such moments. Yet, even the toughest skin doesn't stop the sting entirely. For a moment, he thought about brushing it off, treating it as yet another instance of ignorance not worth his attention. But the atmosphere shifted, an electric tension hanging in the air that told him ignoring it wouldn't suffice this time. What Terrence didn't yet realize was how far this would escalate, or how much he'd have to reveal about himself in the moments ahead. At first glance, Terrence appeared unassuming. A man in his early 40s with a soft build and a laid-back presence, he seemed ordinary. But there was an understated strength within him, hinting at a past far more intricate than most could guess. In his 20s, Terrence had been a martial artist, competing regionally. His expertise was in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a discipline requiring not only physical power, but also sharp mental focus and unwavering patience. However, life had not been kind to Terrence in recent years. After losing his wife in a tragic car accident, he spiraled into grief, using food as a means of comfort. He left competitive fighting and gradually distanced himself from the life he once knew. The lean, agile athlete he had been transformed into someone quieter, heavier, and more introspective. Yet, beneath the surface, his sense of discipline never fully faded. To casual observers, Terrence's slow walks through the park or his occasional chuckles at a nearby cafe painted the picture of a man at peace. But what they didn't see were the early mornings spent in solitude, rolling out an old mat in his garage to practice drills he'd learned years ago. They didn't witness the nights when he shadowboxed under dim lighting, sweat streaming down as he fought not physical opponents, but the haunting struggles of his past. For Terrence, the park was more than a recreational spot. It was his refuge, a place where he could breathe deeply and feel connected to the world without being overwhelmed by it. He often watched children play, listened to the rhythmic sound of sneakers hitting the pavement, and allowed himself brief moments to recall what peace felt like. But not everyone shared his sense of serenity. While Savannah was famous for its charm, it wasn't without its problems. Recently, local news had reported incidents involving a group of young men stirring up trouble in the area. They weren't hardened criminals, just reckless teens emboldened by their numbers and a thirst for chaos. These boys thrived on finding vulnerable targets, those they believed wouldn't fight back. To them, Terrence probably seemed like the perfect mark, a big, slow-moving man, alone and seemingly defenseless. Little did they know how mistaken their assumptions were. It was the type of crowd that thrived on exploiting weakness, always seeking out those they believed wouldn't fight back. To them, Terrence must have seemed like the ideal target, a large man walking alone at a slow pace. What could he possibly do to defend himself? But their assumptions couldn't have been further from the truth, and they were about to discover just how mistaken they were. The group's mocking laughter grew louder as they moved toward Terrence. There were 4 of them, each emboldened by the presence of the others. Their leader, a wiry figure who seemed to thrive on attention, sauntered ahead with exaggerated confidence. His voice cut through the peaceful hum of the park. "Hey, big guy, are you deaf or just ignoring us?" he shouted, smirking as his friends egged him on. Terrence slowly looked up, his calm, unreadable expression unshaken. He took a deliberate sip from his water bottle before setting it down on the bench beside him. In the past, he might have snapped back, but he had learned over the years that reacting impulsively only gave people like this the satisfaction they craved. "I heard you," Terrence replied evenly, his tone free of fear or anger. "What do you want?" The leader's grin widened. "What do we want?" "Well, for starters, maybe some advice on bulking up like you. That's a lot of weight to carry, man. How do you even get off the couch?" Their laughter rang out again, grating and relentless. Terrence didn't react. He'd dealt with this kind of ridicule before. But then one of the boys, a wiry teen wearing a backward baseball cap, stepped forward and gave Terrence a light shove on the shoulder. "This is our park, man. Maybe you should keep moving before we make you." The shove was mild compared to the hits Terrence had endured during his years of training. It wasn't about the force. It was the intent behind it. He felt the heat rising in his chest but kept himself still. Violence was no longer his first choice. "I'm not looking for trouble," Terrence said, his voice steady and composed. "Just let me enjoy my evening, and you can have yours." But bullies rarely back down when they think they've found easy prey. Instead, they'd push harder. The leader grabbed Terrence's water bottle from the bench and tossed it to the ground, spilling its contents over the pavement. "Whoops," he sneered. "Looks like your evening just got worse." Terrence stood up slowly, his full height looming over the group. For a brief moment, hesitation flickered in their eyes, but it was fleeting. They weren't intimidated by size. They were banking on the belief that Terrence wouldn't fight back. But this wasn't about intimidation for Terrence. It was about maintaining control. Control over the situation, and more importantly, control over himself. He glanced at the water bottle on the ground, then back at the group. "This is your last chance," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Walk away." The leader laughed nervously, trying to mask his unease. "Or what? You gonna sit on us?" That was the breaking point. One of the boys lunged forward, reaching for Terrence's arm in a clumsy attempt to provoke him. The move was poorly executed, and Terrence's instincts kicked in instantly. He sidestepped, grabbed the boy's wrist, and twisted just enough to send him sprawling onto the ground. The gang's laughter died instantly. The boy on the ground clutched his wrist, groaning, not seriously injured, but clearly shaken. Terrence had applied just enough pressure to make a point without causing harm. The remaining three froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then, as if by unspoken agreement, they rushed him all at once, relying on their numbers to overwhelm him. Terrence's body moved on autopilot, his years of training ingrained into his muscle memory. The first punch came from the left, a wild, uncoordinated swing. Terrence ducked and swept his leg out, sending the attacker off balance. Another boy lunged from the right, his fists flailing. Terrence sidestepped, caught the boy's arm, and twisted it into a controlled lock, forcing him to his knees. The leader hesitated, his confidence visibly cracking as he watched his crew fall apart. "What the hell, man?" he barked, his voice trembling. "You think you're some kind of ninja?" Terrence didn't respond. He was focused, his movements precise and his breathing steady. The third boy, emboldened by his leader's taunts, grabbed a jagged stick from the ground and charged at Terrence. Waiting until the last second, Terrence sidestepped and disarmed him with a swift motion, the stick clattering harmlessly to the pavement. The boy stumbled backward, his confidence shattered. Now visibly panicked, the leader backed away, holding up his hands. "All right, man, we're done. You made your point." Terrence stepped forward, his imposing frame casting a shadow over the self-proclaimed leader. His voice was calm but carried unmistakable authority. "No, you're not done. Not yet. You think strength is about gaining up on someone who won't fight back. That's not strength. That's cowardice." The leader's bravado dissolved completely, replaced by the raw fear of someone who realized too late they had underestimated their opponent. "We didn't mean anything by it," he muttered, avoiding Terrence's gaze. Terrence shook his head. "You meant every word and every shove. But now you're learning that actions have consequences." He let his words hang in the air for a moment before stepping back. "Pick up your friend and leave." And next time you want to prove yourselves, try doing something that actually matters. The gang scrambled to help their fallen member, mumbling weak apologies as they retreated. They glanced back over their shoulders as if expecting Terrence to follow, but he didn't. He simply stood there, watching until they disappeared from view. Unbeknownst to Terrence, this moment would leave a lasting impact, rippling through the park in ways he hadn't anticipated.